Hello and welcome to another episode of The Identity Navigator. In today's episode, we are taking a bit of a detour from the usual I am landscape. Let me start with a question that has been asked for decades. Where are all the aliens? Let me take you back to a summer afternoon in 1950. We are in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where some of the brightest physicists of the era gathered to solve the biggest problem in science. It's lunchtime. Enrico Fermi, already a legend, a Nobel Prize winning physicist known for both his deep insights and dry wit, is having a casual conversation with a few colleagues, including Edward Taylor and Herbert York. The topic? UFO. Now remember, this was 1950s, so recent report and cartoons has sparked curiosity. Now, this was early Cold War America, a time of technological anxiety and fascinated with space and surveillance. UFO at that time became a pop culture and strategic fixation. So, Fermi and his colleague weren't just pondering a distant philosophical question, they were responding to something that was very much in the cultural moment. And then Fermi, almost out of nowhere, asks a question that would echo through decades of scientific and philosophical debate. Where is everybody? Three words, three hauntingly simple words. Because if the universe is as vast as we believe, with billions of stars and potentially habitable planets, then intelligent life should be everywhere. So why haven't we found any? This became known as the Fermi Paradox, a name his colleague later gave it. Even though Fermi never formally published on the topic, it was just one of those moments, a noble mind distilling cosmic wonder into a single, hauntingly question over lunch. Fermi, by the way, wasn't just a big thinker, he was the rare blend of theorist and experimentalist, helping build the first nuclear reactor and making foundational contributions to quantum theory, statistical mechanics, and particle physics. So, needless to say, when he spoke, people listened. And in that moment, people really listened. Fermi followed up with a flurry of questions. Where are the signals? If civilizations exist, why haven't they visited us? Are we looking the wrong way? Could intelligent life be avoiding us? Do civilizations self destruct before they make contact? Or are we the first? These weren't just questions about aliens, these were questions about us, about scale, time, communication, survival, and misalignment. And that is where this story connects, not just to the cosmos, but to how teams, organizations, and especially identity programs grow, evolve, or remain silent. Because what if the biggest paradox in IM isn't that it's underfunded or misunderstood, but that it's sending the wrong signals at the wrong time or no signals at all? So, where are all the aliens is the Fermi paradox in a nutshell. Statistically speaking, the universe should be teeming with intelligent life, billion of stars, trillions of planets. So why haven't we heard anything? But instead of going full sci-fi, let's take that question and flip it around. What if the same silence we see in the cosmos is mirrored in how organizations grow, especially in cybersecurity and IAM? Today I want to explore a provocative idea. What if the Fermi paradox, team maturity, and IM maturity all follow eerily similar patterns of silence, misalignment, and missed signals? So let's dive in about this great silence and maturity illusion. So back to the space for a moment. Let's sit with that big question for a moment. Where is everybody? Turns out There is a whole catalog of answers, some wild, some philosophical, and some that hit a little too close to home. Here are a few of the most popular theories. We are early, like really early. Maybe we are the first. The universe is old, around 13.8 billion years. But intelligent life might just be getting started. Maybe the cosmic party hasn't kicked off yet, and we showed up way too early with chips and salsa. If that's the case, we are not alone. We are just pioneers. The silence isn't ominous, it's just the calm before the noise. Another popular theory is they are too far, too quiet, or too different. Maybe alien civilization are out there, but we are not tuned to the right frequency, like trying to pick up Wi-Fi with a toaster. Maybe they communicate with neutrinos or quantum entanglement or something our little radios and telescopes can't imagine. Or maybe this is a favorite, they are deliberately staying quiet. This is the zoo hypothesis. Earth is in a cosmic wildfire preserve. We are being observed but not contacted. Like we are part of some interstellar episode of Planet Earth. Creepy, maybe, but kind of flattering. Another theory is they are all gone, and this one is darker. Maybe civilizations do emerge and they wipe themselves out. Nuclear war, environmental collapse, rogue AI, take your pick. They rise, burn bright, and then disappear. It's not that they weren't there, it's that they are gone now. So if we got all those possibilities, that we are early, or they are hiding, or they just couldn't hold it together, then what ties them all together? This is where this next idea hits like a quiet punch to the gut. It's called the Great Filter, and it suggests that somewhere along the timelines from mud to Mars, from chemistry to culture to colonizing the stars, there is a wall, an invisible choke point. Somewhere so hard to survive or so rare to overcome that most civilizations never make it past. Some never even smart, others collapse before they send a single signal. And the lucky few who do break through, they either stay quiet or they are just not us. It's not a theory that gives us answers, it gives you a mirror. Because once you hear about the filter, you start asking, have we passed it or is it still ahead? And once you have asked that question, you can't unask it. Think of the great filter like this. If life is common in the universe, and intelligent life should be out there, then something must be stopping it from spreading, thriving, or communicating. The great filter is the invisible wall that most life forms never make it past. It could be early, like the leap from single celled organizations to complex animals. Maybe that almost never happens. Or it could be later, like the jump from intelligent life to spacefaring civilizations that survive their own technology, avoid self destruction, and live long enough to leave a mark. In short, the Great Filter says something's killing off civilization before they get a chance to say hello. And here is the eerie part, we don't know whether we have already passed it or if it is still ahead of us. If we have already survived the filter, maybe we are rare and special. But if the filter lies ahead, like war, climate collapse, or runaway AI, then maybe we are headed the same way as all the others, silence. Now, zoom in from galaxies to your own organization. Sometimes teams and IM programs hit their own great filters, not external threats, but internal bottlenecks. Political misalignment, leadership churn, legacy tech nobody wants to touch, burnout, or just endless compliance without real value. They don't die with a bang, they die with silence. And no one even notices until the business asks, where is our IM program? And the answer is just as chilling as Fermi's question. I've seen incredibly talented teams stay silent for years, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are too busy fighting fires, chasing quarterly goals, or stuck in a reactive posture. They don't send the right signals to the organization, or worse, no one is listening. And it's the same with IM programs, where many companies implement IM to check a compliance box. But are they actually maturing, or are they just orbiting? We assume that complexity equals maturity, more tools, more policies, more integrations. But that's a false signal. Just like a noisy radio doesn't mean that there is alien life out there, a noisy IM landscape doesn't mean we are aligned with business value. Then there is a survivorship bias in the cosmos and in the boardroom. Here is another cosmic mind bender, the survivorship bias. Maybe the civilization that last long enough to be visible aren't the loud ones. They are the ones that learn to collaborate, stay resilient, and not burn themselves out. Now look inwards. Do we celebrate the IM programs that last, or just the flashy ones that launch with noise but fade in 18 months? Do we reward teams for stability and long term value, or only when they deliver heroic recoveries after disasters? This survivorship bias shapes how we build and lead teams. Often we ignore the slow, quiet, consistent evolution that real maturity requires, and instead glorifying the chaotic bursts. Now, let's tie this together, these signals, alignments, and IM as a civilization project. The Fermi Paradox might be story of a misaligned communication. IM too suffers from a signal to noise problem. Team sends risk alerts that no one reads. IM team implements policies no one understands. Developer ignores access reviews because they are seen as pointless. And identity governance become a black hole instead of a guiding star. And here is the kicker. IM is not a feature. It's a civilization project. It's how your organization communicates, evolves, and survives at its scales. Just like intelligent civilization might rely on coordination and trust to thrive across galaxies, businesses need aligned identity systems and mature teams to survive the complexity they create. Now, advanced or modern IM maturity models extend far beyond static RBAC or ABAC, which is role based access control and attribute based access control. Industry framework now emphasize continuous adaptive and policy centric designs. For example, zero trust maturity model like NIST SP 800-207 or CISA ZTMM treats every access as a verification challenge. CISA's zero trust identity pillar explicitly charts progression from legacy login, which is like password MFA with static access, to phishing resistant MFA and continuous authentication and authorization. In practice, early IM stages may involve basic MFA and role based policies, while advanced stages embrace dynamic risk based controls. Uh, One of the great paper that I looked at it was Okta's model notes about initial steps towards zero trust with dynamic policies up to risk-based fine-grained access controls at maturity. So have a look at it if you haven't. Likewise, identity fabric and related concepts aim to unify and future-proof IAM. An identity fabric is envisioned as a cloud-native interoperable mesh of identity service. It centralizes identity management across hybrid environments, automates identity lifecycle processes, and applies consistent policy everywhere. Okta describes it as a comprehensive and coherent IAM platform that scales with IoT, mobile growth, and aligning identity to business objectives while ensuring security and compliance. So key principles includes analytics, continuous observability, automation, and standard-based interoperability so that different systems work together seamlessly. Another emerging paradigm is identity as code, treating identities and access configurations like software code. Organizations are expected to manage IAM policies via version controlled files and automated pipelines. One recent forecast calls out identity as a code practices, example defining role and access policies in code repository, as a game changer that enables consistent, scalable IAM implementations. By automated provisioning and deprovisioning and policy rollouts, team can maintain robust security controls while scaling much more efficiently. Closely related are policy-driven architecture, often called policy-based access control like PBAC. And instead of fixed rules, PBAC grants access based on dynamic rules and attributes. So in one definition, PBAC determines access privilege dynamically based on rules and policies, offering fine-grained controls, which is like time and location based, and easier permission updates. This contrasts with static RBAC or with PBAC and ABAC. Adding or changing policies doesn't require redefining hundreds of rules. Uh, Finally, many vendors and standard bodies provide formal IAM maturity model. For instance, Okta's workforce identity maturity model outlines level from basic on-prem IAM up to sophisticated zero trust deployment. It highlights outcome at each stage. As identity programs mature, organizations see increased identity management effectiveness and ROI, improved user experience, and even business agility. CISA's zero trust maturity model similarly lays out traditional through optimal maturity for identity, devices, network, etc., guiding teams on the journey to fully adaptive IAM. In all these frameworks, the trend is the same, moving from siloed manual access processes to automated pervasive control anchored in identity. Fermi Paradox as a metaphor for organizations. The Fermi Paradox offers rich metaphors for organizational growth and failure. The Great Filter, the idea that advanced life eventually self destructs or is eliminated by some hurdle, applied to companies. It suggests that only a few organizations survive all stages from startup to scale. As one recent essay puts it, the development of an enterprise must go through repeated elimination and screening. Only those that can overcome difficulties are considered great enterprises. In other words, firms face many incremental filters: financing, competition, complexity, cultural crisis, etc. And only those that navigate each survives to greatness. Leaders can see parallels without the right strategy at each phase, which is product market phase, operational rigor, culture, a product filters out and fails. Another interpretation is collapse versus homeostasis. They propose that any civilization undergoes rapid, unconstrained growth, risks a burnout or collapse, or else it consciously shifts to a steady state, which is homeostatic awakening, and essentially goes dark to outside observers. For organizations, this suggests two bad outcomes when scaling. Either exploding complexity leads to collapse, example, runaway technical debt, staff burnout, or outages, or the team stops pushing forward to preserve stability, losing competitive edge. The metaphor warns IAM leaders that unchecked expansion, adding hundreds of apps, roles, and policies without cohesion, can cause systematic failure or at least a loss of innovation. Conversely, becoming too conservative, never upgrading legacy IAM, avoiding new user needs, risk stagnation. Surviving the great filter means balancing growth and resilience. Communication failure in the Fermi context or the silent universe can map to organization silos and knowledge losses. Just as we may not hear alien signals due to incompatible technologies or deliberate silence, team can miss each other's signals. A department might build IM process in a vacuum analogous to an isolated civilization, so critical information never reaches others. In practice, poor cross team communication has doomed many IM projects akin to two civilizations speaking different languages. In some, interpreting the Fermi Paradox for IM highlights the filters organizations face, the danger of collective burnout, and the perils of going radio silent internally. Just as astronomers debate whether advanced life perishes or hires itself quiet, IM leaders must ensure that teams don't crash under complexity nor ossify into silence. IMT maturity also follows general patterns of organizational behavior. Peter Seneg's learning organization concept applied strongly. IM teams must practice system thinkings and continual learning to adapt. Uh, so the five principles were shared vision, personal mastery, mental models, team learning, and system thinking. These five disciplines describe how to manage the success and development of an organization. And by this view, an IM program succeeds not just by technology, but by developing a culture that continually questions assumptions, example about risk or experiments, pilots new architecture, and updates mental models when requirements change. A rigid static IM culture is likely to disappear as many firms without learning disciplines. Team development stage, and this is Tuckman's model, are also evident in IM project. New IM teams or cross-functional IM working groups go through four stages typically. The first one is forming, where the roles are being set up and scope is being set up. The next is storming, conflicts over priorities or design. The third is norming, where agreed processes have evolved, and the third is performing, which results into high productivity. So forming, storming, norming, and performing. For example, at forming, team members might be polite but uncertain about goals. In storming, clashes often emerge over who owns IM policy. Leaders who recognize these stages can manage them. As one practical guide notes, these stages are a useful framework for understanding team behavior. For instance, if an IM rollout stalls, leader can work to facilitate negotiation and trust building to reach norming. Conway's law is particularly resonant for IM. As Melvin Conway famously stated, any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of organization's communication structure. In practice, this means if an enterprise is siloed, example separate identity teams for each business unit or cloud, its IM system will be fragmented. Conversely, a flat collaborative structure often yields more modular, integrable designs. Ignoring Conway's law, twist system design. Teams that don't talk create tangled modules, whereas closely knit teams build cohesive systems. For IM, the lesson is clear. Organizational alignment and communication must precede IM design decision. If the company has multiple uncoordinated groups requesting access in different ways, the IM solution will become an unwieldy patchwork. From system thinkings, concepts like feedback loops and technical debt apply too. IM entropic growth accumulates unless checked by governance, a negative feedback loop. So leaders can apply agile or product management principles, iterate on IM features, solicit user feedback, and treat each rollout as an experiment. Overarching frameworks like lean or theory of constraints remind IM teams to identify bottlenecks and address root cause. In some, seeing IM through systems or psychology lens, learning culture, stage, team growth, structural alignment provides a roadmap for maturation and highly common failure, pattern of conflicts, silos, and neglect of soft features. So, real world IM projects often stumble in familiar ways, and there are surveys and case studies that highlight several recurring pitfalls. Lack of clear roadmap and scope creep. Many IM initiatives fail because there is no prioritized plan. Experts advise building a roadmap of most important things to least important things. Without this, teams try to do everything at once and get overwhelmed. Undefined objectives leads to endless new requirements and delays. Weak governance or stakeholder alignment. A common theme is insufficient linkage to business processes. If IM requirements are not mapped to actual workflows, projects drift. In practice, successful IM teams review business workflows and map all required user access, then architect the IM around those groups. Conversely, failing to engage HR, security, and business stakeholders leads to resistance. An IM program should align to the information governance strategy, including compliance and continuity planning. When governance is neglected, the result is inconsistent policies and audit gaps. Insufficient executive support. IM projects need visible backing from top management. Without executive sponsorship and funding, projects languish, if not fail. Many analysts cite insufficient executive buy in as a top failure cause. Even when budgets exist, lacking a strong sponsor to cut through departmental inertia means IM work stalls. Poor communication and training. Another frequent issue is neglecting the human side. Rolling out stricter access policies without explaining the why causes user pushback and workarounds. There is a need to over communicate changes to end users, explaining how new processes protect data. When organizations skip them, they often see help desk overload and shadow IT as users try to circumvent unfamiliar controls. Technical fragmentation and legacy debt. Some organizations inherit a mix of legacy IM systems with no unification plan. This leads to brittle, high maintenance environments. Research on identity failures cite real examples. In one banking case, conflicting procedures in different departments causes a customer's identity information to collapse. When regulators forced a citizen ID update, the bank had no procedures for change of the identity attribute. So one account had to be manually recreated, causing months of delays, while investment accounts used a different ad hoc processes. Such stories illustrate how lack of coherent IM process can cause major outage or data inconsistency. And the last one I want to touch on is excessive complexity, where in some firms, IM implementations become so complex that they lose track of basic security. Projects aiming for too broad a scope often collapse under their own weight. In summary, IM dysfunction usually stems from combining strategy gaps, which is poor planning and governance, with organizational issues, silos, weak leadership, user friction, and learning from failures means heeding those patterns. Define your scope, secure executive buy in, involve stakeholder, and never underestimate the change management work. As one industry survey concludes, lacking a clear roadmap or forcing all departments to adopt at once risk failures from the start. Leadership strategies and mindset shifts that we need to look into. So, to survive the great filters of growth and building a mature, scalable IM, leadership must adopt both strategic and cultural practices, which means executive sponsorship and cross functional collaboration. Uh, Ensure IM is a fully funded multi year program with strong executive buy in. The top down mandate helps break down silos. Second is clear roadmap and governance alignment. Treat IM like a product. Build a prioritized roadmap, right? And set measurable objectives. Align the IM program with the company's governance strategy. Third is fostering a learning culture or growth mindset. Adopt the philosophy of a learning organization. Encourage the team to question assumptions, analyze features, and update processes. Leaders should set a vision for a resilient, adaptive IAM, the shared vision discipline. And for instance, if an IAM rollout missed a key use case, use that as a learning point rather than blame. Encourage experimentation. For example, pilot a new access request portal with a small user group. Measure user satisfaction and make changes before wider rollout. Reinforce that mistakes are feedbacks, not disasters. Transparent communication and education, and over communication is the mantra. Leaders should ensure changes are explained in plain language, why new MFA is needed, how SSO will ease logins, etc. Automation and resilience engineering. Embrace technologies that reduce human error. Treat IAM configurations as code. Agility and continuous improvement. Finally, leaders must be as dynamic as the threat. The Fermi metaphor suggests preparing for existential filters, and for IAM, this might mean a major breach or regulatory audit. Resilience can be built by practicing incident response and by avoiding monocultures. Yeah, don't put all trust in one tool. In essence, IAM leadership should be fearless yet humble. Fearless in securing resources and driving change, and humble enough to learn continuously. By combining top down mandate with bottom up learning, and by viewing the IAM program as an evolving ecosystem, teams can survive the great filters and achieve a maintainable, scalable identity infrastructure rather than crashing or freezing when challenges arise. Let's look into how do we what does a mature IAM programs look like? Not one that install the most tools, not one that controls access with the most friction, but that one that aligns with the business mission. One that builds teams that are resilient and not just reactive. One that rewards signals over noise and create a culture where trust scales. And what does that take? That takes vision, not just from the IAM team, but from leadership. That takes patience because real maturity takes time. That takes feedback loops to hear the right signals and discard the noise. And that takes culture that doesn't burn out its brightest stars. So, in closing, next time you wonder why a program, a team, or even your own career feels stuck, ask the same question Fermi did. Where is the signal? Maybe it's out there. Maybe it's here. Maybe we are the ones who needs to become easier to find and easier to align with. Thank you for listening. This has been the Identity Navigator, and thank you for taking this journey with me. You can reach out to me via LinkedIn or send me at email at theidentitynavigator@gmail.com. Both of these info I'll put in the show notes. Until next time, this is Rohit, your Identity Navigator.